April 11, 1945, northern Germany. A kilometer east of Gardelegen, 23 American soldiers lay flat along a drainage ditch, rifles trained on a stone barn 200 meters across open farmland. The barn door hung crooked. No movement. No smoke. But sound carried. Voices low and uncertain, German voices. Lieutenant Harmon's hand rested on the stock of his carbine. His thumb lay against the safety. He had not moved it. Behind him, Sergeant Kozlowski breathed through his nose, slow and deliberate. The rest of the platoon stayed locked in position. Eyes forward, fingers on triggers. The voices in the barn stopped. Wind pushed through new grass. Someone swallowed. No one spoke. Harmon's orders had been clear since morning. Secure the area, eliminate resistance, move east. The barn qualified. The voices qualified. Standard procedure did not require negotiation. Still, no one fired. 3rd Platoon Baker Company had been moving through light resistance for 6 days. German units were collapsing, surrendering in clusters, or vanishing into forests. The front had turned fluid. Orders updated hourly, then stopped updating. Communications were inconsistent. The platoon had entered Gardelegen that morning expecting either organized defense or total abandonment. They found neither. Civilian movement suggested recent evacuation. Abandoned Wehrmacht equipment lay scattered. Helmets, gas masks, field packs. But no bodies, no weapons. The town felt emptied deliberately. At 13:40 hours, a runner from 2nd Platoon reported voices and movement in a barn northeast of the main road. No shots had been exchanged. No identification made. The runner's lieutenant requested backup before approach. Harmon took 3rd Platoon forward. They crossed 2 fields using hedgerows for cover. Standard advance, no contact. At 14:10 hours, they settled into position along the drainage ditch. The barn sat isolated, no adjacent structures, no vehicles. A single door faced west. 3 narrow windows near the roofline, too high for observation. The voices began again shortly after they arrived. German, male, multiple speakers. No shouting, conversation, not commands. Harmon could not make out words, but tone suggested discussion, possibly argument. He raised binoculars. No weapons visible through the door gap. No movement at the windows. Standard doctrine was unambiguous: unknown enemy position, daytime, open terrain. Suppress with fire. Then assault or bypass. Harmon had done this 14 times since crossing the Rhine. But he did not give the order. Every man in the ditch knew what came next. Training had been repetitive and absolute. Unknown voices in a closed structure meant hostile presence until proven otherwise. April 1945 did not permit assumptions. Fanatical resistance had appeared in farmhouses, church basements, rural schoolhouses. SS units in civilian clothes. Hitlerjugend with Panzerfausts. Wehrmacht remnants with nothing left to lose. The protocol was mechanical: call out once in German, wait 30 seconds, fire if no compliance. Harmon carried a printed phonetic card for the call-out. He had used it 11 times. Twice, men had emerged with hands raised. 9 times. Silence followed, then gunfire from the structure. In those cases, suppressive fire preceded grenades, then room clearing. Kozlowski had been part of all 14 prior engagements. He understood the rhythm. When Harmon hesitated at a structure, it usually lasted 5 seconds, maybe 10. Long enough to assess windows, roof condition, possible escape routes. Then the order came. Riflemen fired high first, then low. If return fire came, they escalated. If not, they approached with caution. This hesitation was now past 2 minutes. No one questioned it aloud. Harmon was not indecisive. He had led the platoon since January without major casualties, a record that mattered more than speed. Men trusted his judgment even when they did not understand it. But they were ready. Safety's off. breathing controlled, muscles tensed for recoil. The barn door remained in every rifle's sight picture. All Harmon needed to do was speak. He did not. Harmon's right index finger rested along the trigger guard. Not on the trigger. Alongside it. He watched the door. The voices had stopped again. He did not lower the binoculars. He did not look at Kozlowski. He did not check his watch. Seconds passed. 10, 20. The wind shifted slightly. The barn door creaked but did not move. Harmon's breathing stayed even. His posture did not change. To an observer, he appeared frozen mid-assessment. But his jaw tightened once briefly, then released. Kozlowski waited for the German call-out. It did not come. Private Delacroix, furthest left in the line, blinked twice and reset his cheek, welled against the rifle stock. He did not understand the delay, but did not break position. Harmon's hand left the carbine. He lowered the binoculars. His expression showed nothing. No order was given. Time became difficult to measure. Men in the ditch began to shift weight from one knee to the other. Small movements, controlled, but present. Tension did not decrease, it stretched. Kozlowski glanced at Harmon once. Harmon's eyes stayed forward. Kozlowski returned his attention to the barn. At some point, 3 minutes, maybe 4, the voices resumed. Quieter now. Fewer speakers. The words were indistinct, but the tone had changed. Less discussion. More uncertainty. Delacroix's rifle barrel dipped half an inch before he corrected it. He exhaled slowly through his mouth, trying not to disturb the grass in front of him. No movement came from the barn. No door opening. No attempt to exit or signal. If the occupants knew American soldiers were present, they gave no indication. If they did not know, their ignorance seemed impossible given the open ground and clear sight lines. Harmon still had not moved. His hands rested on his knees now. Carbine across his lap. His gaze remained fixed on the barn, but his focus seemed elsewhere. Inward, calculating something the others could not see. A crow landed on the barn roof. It pecked twice at the shingles, then flew off. Kozlowski finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Lieutenant." Harmon raised one hand. Not a command, just acknowledgement. He did not turn his head. The platoon stayed in place. Minutes continued. No second question came. Waiting became the action. Harmon had passed the same barn on the approach, 40 minutes earlier. Moving through the field to the south. He had not stopped to observe it then. Barns were common, usually empty. But he had noticed something peripheral, a detail he had not processed fully until settling into position. Behind the barn, half hidden by tall grass, sat a wooden cart. Not military, civilian, small enough for one horse or none. The kind used by farmers for short hauls. It had been loaded recently. Furrows in the mud behind it were fresh, weight pressed, not rain smoothed. When the voices began, Harmon registered a second detail: no boots. The sounds of movement inside the barn included scraping, shuffling, but not the hard concussive step of military boots on wood or stone. Softer, irregular. Third, the conversation. Harmon's German was limited to commands and questions, but he recognized cadence. Military German had a rhythm, clipped, functional, rank reinforced. The speech in the barn lacked that structure. It sounded provisional, uncertain. He considered the possibility of wounded soldiers or deserters. Both were common now. Both were still combatants under doctrine. But wounded men did not load carts. Deserters did not linger in barns a kilometer from American advance routes. He thought about Gardelegen itself. Evacuated. Civilian movement. The Wehrmacht equipment left behind had been stripped. Weapons gone, ammunition gone, only the weight remained. Harmon did not conclude. He assessed probabilities. and the probability that mattered most was not whether hostiles occupied the barn. It was whether firing would be irreversible. He decided it would, so he did not fire. At 14:30 hours, Harmon stood without explanation. He slung his carbine and turned to Kozlowski, speaking quietly. "Pull back to the road. We'll bypass north." Kozlowski hesitated only briefly, then nodded. He signaled the platoon with hand gestures. Men rose in sequence, maintaining spacing. Rifles still oriented toward the barn as they withdrew. No one questioned the decision aloud. Relief was present, but unexpressed. Delacroix exhaled fully for the first time in 20 minutes. Another soldier rubbed his trigger hand against his trousers, releasing cramped fingers. The platoon moved west, then north, circling wide around the barn's sightline. The voices inside continued briefly, then stopped. No door opened. No figures emerged. The barn remained still. By 14:45 hours, 3rd Platoon had rejoined the main column on the road east. No report was filed regarding the barn. Harmon told the company commander they had encountered no resistance in the sector. This was technically accurate. Resistance required action. The platoon continued east. 2 days later, they reached the Elbe. The barn was not mentioned again. No after-action report documented the barn. Company records for April 11, 1945 listed 3rd Platoon's movement as routine reconnaissance with no engagement. Harmon's personal log, kept sporadically, contained no entry for that day. Kozlowski mentioned the incident once, years later, to another veteran. He described it as a barn we didn't clear. When asked why, he said Harmon had decided it wasn't necessary. He did not elaborate. The conversation moved on. None of the men in the ditch that day wrote about it in letters home. It did not qualify as combat. It was not traumatic. It was simply a moment when nothing happened, and nothing happening did not make compelling narrative. Military historians examining the Gardelegen area focus on events 2 days prior. The massacre at the Essenschnee barn, where over 1,000 concentration camp prisoners were burned alive by SS guards and Wehrmacht troops on April 13, 1945. That atrocity, discovered by American forces on April 15, dominates all historical documentation of the region. The barn northeast of town, the one Harmon bypassed, does not appear in any wartime map, unit history, or veteran testimony beyond Kozlowski's single brief mention. If it was occupied on April 11, no record exists of by whom, or why, or what they were doing there. If it was empty, and the voices were misheard or misidentified, that too is unrecorded. What is certain? No shots were fired. No casualties resulted. No investigation followed. Harmon returned to Pennsylvania in November 1945. He worked as a machinist, married in 1947, and raised 3 children. He did not join veteran organizations. When asked about the war, he provided brief, factual answers and redirected conversation. In 1963, his youngest son asked him if he had ever killed anyone. Harmon said he did not know for certain, which was true for most infantrymen. His son asked if he had ever chosen not to. Harmon paused, then said, "Once, maybe." He did not elaborate. Kozlowski remained in the Army until 1962, retiring as a master sergeant. He trained new infantry platoons during the Korean War. In those training sessions, he emphasized patience in target identification. "You can't unfire a round," he told recruits more than once. Delacroix left the service in 1946 and never spoke about the war publicly. He died in 1989. His family found no letters, no journals, no photographs from his service. Of the 23 men in that ditch, 12 were dead by 1990. None left documented accounts of April 11, 1945. The barn itself no longer exists. Gardelegen was rebuilt in the post-war decades. Agricultural land was redistributed. Structures from 1945 were demolished or repurposed. By 1970, the area northeast of town had been converted to industrial storage. No one alive today can identify which structure, if any, stood at that location. A shot that is never fired leaves no crater, no casing, no blood trace. It does not appear in ammunition expenditure logs. It generates no casualty report, no investigation, no witness statement under oath. A command that is never given cannot be quoted, analyzed, or second-guessed. It exists only as absence, the space between expectation and action, where doctrine prepared one outcome and human judgment selected another. 20. 3 men lay in a ditch on April 11, 1945, and did nothing. This was not cowardice. It was not mercy. It was not doctrine. It was a decision made in seconds and never explained. Years later, the men who were there would struggle to recall details. The barn's exact shape, the color of the door, how long they waited. Most remembered only the feeling, the tightness in the chest, the readiness, and then the slow dissolve of tension when nothing came. Somewhere in northern Germany, on a spring afternoon in the final month of the European War, violence waited to happen. All conditions were met, all permissions granted, all mechanisms prepared, and then someone chose stillness. The war moved on, history moved on, the silence remained.